Hey there, I'm Gabriel St. Jones here for the Otaku Nexus, and you're about to watch an anime review. Lucky viewer. Anime has slowly been becoming more and more popularized in the Western world over the past 20 or so years, with more exposure now than ever before, or at least that's what Netflix's algorithm seems to be telling them this year. They decided to throw their hat into the anime ring by picking up an exclusive show for their service, Knights of Sidonia. So will Knights hold up next to their other exclusive content like House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, or Arrested Development? Only time will tell, and me, I'll tell you. Right now. Knights of Sidonia is set in a futuristic world where the Earth has been destroyed by giant space creatures called guana. In this future, humanity's been relegated to living on giant space turds, where due to genetic engineering, sex and food are a thing of the past. So hell. They're in hell. We follow Nagate Tanikaza, a natural-born human living underground without genetic enhancements. He ventures above ground to steal stuff because... poor. He gets chased by these guys, and then his fingers do this because he decides to pick a fight with gravity. He gets captured, nursed back to health, tries to escape, gets captured again, nursed back to health again, meets Lady Zex, and eventually becomes a mech pilot. Because of course. As far as animation goes, this show is technically animation. I can never really tell if it was pure CG animation designed to look like CG, CGI laid over animation, or just a fevered nightmare world where emotion is outlawed and replaced by deadpan stares. It's not that the animation is bad, because it's clearly well produced, and I do dig the particle effects and the little details, but that's really about it. The mech fights are clunky and uneventful, most of the characters look exactly the same, and their faces, much like Christian Stewart, are incapable of human emotion. And it's not just their faces. Everyone in this thing looks and moves like an alien wearing a skin-tight people suit and trying to replicate our imitation of them. In the real world, if anybody in power actually met this guy, they wouldn't give him a giant robot's pilot. They would dissect him and try to figure out who the poor soul is that he murdered in order to get the skin he's wearing. But maybe I'm being too hard on it. Or not hard enough. Seriously, these people are not just inhuman, they're terrifying. They all look like what would happen if you mixed a sociopath with a real doll and told it to go stare at people until it gave them terror shits. When it comes to the audio, things do get a little bit better. All the actors do give decent performances, but because of the animation, their range never really shows enough to make you feel anything. The real gem, in my opinion, is the music. Both the opening and the ending give off a sense of an epic ballad. The vocals also go a long way to set the tone for this space opera anime, although the end song is a little bit heavier and therefore more my personal style. Now, we talk about the characters. First off, there's our lead Nagate, who is basically your average teenage mech pilot cliche. Then you have Shizuka, the number 2 ranked trainee pilot, who is also a probable love interest for Nagate. Izana, a non-gender specific pilot who becomes good friends with Nagate. Captain Kobayashi, the captain of the Sidonia. Duh. Lala, a bear woman who they refuse to explain sufficiently, and a whole bunch of assholes. There's this asshole, these assholes, this old asshole, this bleached asshole, and this literal asshole. The real problem with characters here outside of the animation is that none of them are really likable. There's a few that I didn't mention because honestly they aren't worth mentioning, and there's even more that get introduced with the slapped together backstory just to die in the same episode. It's like the writers didn't realize that for us to care about a character's death, we first have to care about the character. It's the same reason that Spike and Wolfwood's deaths were so impactful, because people genuinely cared about them. When it comes to the plot, well, there's just not much to say, really. Like I said, we follow Nagate as he tries to steal stuff and gets captured, but the weird thing is, the whole time, he's just going full on Charlton Heston and screaming about Soylent Green or something. But then the second he gets a mech, he's just over it all of a sudden. Which I guess is accurate for a teenager, but it just came off as really weird and was never addressed again. The rest of the story really just revolved around him being the best pilot in the history of ever, and people you don't really care about dying. The humor is at best for slapstick, and at worst is just implemented really awkwardly to break up the monotony between scenes. And the series ends with a good amount of questions, but honestly I just don't care enough to find out the answers. The whole series really just seems like Netflix's attempt to find a show that has as many anime cliches as possible to appease fans. You have mechs, space, naked girls, animal people, a dick ship, tentacle monsters, and an everyman teenage lead. But there are a few things I will say that I liked, one being Izana. See, Izana is a genetically altered person who has no gender. The whole idea being that when he or she falls in love with somebody, then the gender will take form in order to reproduce. I kind of like this because it's a different view on gender identification and equality. But at the same time, it kind of undermines all of that by saying that a man has to be with a woman and vice versa. There's literally no option for homosexuality here. If Izana falls in love with a man, she'll be a woman, and likewise if he falls in love with a woman, he'll be a man. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense. Aside from that, there are a few small things that I enjoyed about this series, but really nothing of note. Now there is a second season coming out, and I doubt I'll be sticking with it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. If you don't mind the animation or the lack of character development and differentiation, and you're into space operas, not for the fighting, but for the fact that it's in space, this could be the show for you. But for the rest of us, I'd say just skip it. Yeah, it starts to pick up later on in the series, but for me it was too little too late, and honestly, I lost interest after the first half, of the first episode. But if you like this video, hit that subscribe button right there, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up to date on all kinds of anime goodness. And if you want to see my face say more things about anime, hit that annotation right there. Also, link in the description below.